So grey foods, what I consider to be grey foods anyway, are cottage cheese, tomatoes, onion, carrots, and sweet potato. So cottage cheese could be a good thing to basically switch in, if you like, as a protein replacement, but you really still need to include the beans and the vegetables in that meal. It's really not great just to have the cottage cheese by itself. Now, one tip here is look for the lowest carbohydrate cottage cheese you can find, not the lowest fat. Generally speaking, the lower fat ones tend to have a higher content of sugar. And on that note, you could definitely slow your fat loss down by having a lot of cottage cheese, and even for some people, just a little bit of cottage cheese is enough to slow down or even stop fat loss. So again, it's something that if you want to test it, maybe once or twice a week, or if you're stuck, it's something you can go to, and it's better than a lot of things out there. But I wouldn't suggest using it, for example, as a staple of every single breakfast or every single lunch, for example. Now, tomatoes and onion, I put them together, and well, they actually taste delicious when you do put them together, but both of them have quite a high sugar content compared to other vegetables. So my suggestion on both of these is limit it to small servings. I've mentioned 2 tablespoons of tomato salsa, for example, and that's a pretty good example of the kind of amount you'd want to limit to. If you're doing diced tomatoes and diced onion, you want to be talking quite a small amount, like 1/4 cup, something like that, maybe 1/3 cup at the most. And by doing that and maybe only eating them once or twice a week, you can get a little bit of extra variety in and not really affect your fat loss too badly. But if you start using them kind of every second meal or something along those lines, it could start to have an impact. Likewise with carrots, obviously they taste really delicious, and one of the reasons for that is they are quite sweet and they do have quite a bit of starch in them as well. Now, they also have quite a lot of fiber, which is a great thing. So my advice here is if you're really interested in having a different kind of vegetable to some of the leafy greens, that carrots may be a good option if you're okay with slowing down your fat loss just a little bit. And always test to see if it affects. And if it affects you, well, you can make a decision about that. But it may well not affect your progress. It really is different between different people. Now, last on the list is sweet potato, and I want to put this one just a few steps away from the others that I've talked about. Now, sweet potato really is a lot more starchy than any of these other grey foods I've talked about, and it could easily stop fat loss entirely, but it may not. So it's a question that comes up a lot because a lot of people are familiar with sweet potato and they really, really enjoy the flavour of it. So I really do suggest testing in small amounts. And in fact, this is a good grey food to consider maybe including as you approach your goal weight. So we always say it's better to approach your goal weight and kind of just drift towards it at the end rather than power into it and crash into it. So adding a bit of sweet potato, for example, when you're 5 pounds away from your goal weight might slow down your fat loss a little bit, but it also might start to give you a look at what your future lifestyle could be like when you're maintaining your weight. So I want you to just consider sweet potato as one of those little things. It might be one of the first things you start to introduce, if you like, once you've got the bulk of your fat loss out of the way.